Welcome back to the Stan Simpson Show. Don't forget you can catch us 24/7 at ctnow.com. Follow us on Facebook. Friend us on Twitter. Here with Michael Prager, who lost 165 pounds, once weighed 365 pounds, the author of Fat Boy, Thin Man. And we're talking about sort of the defining moment that you were saying that you really weren't sure at the end of the day what compelled you to eat. You felt it was an addiction. But you weren't really sure, was there a seminal instant in your life that drove you to that, only that you were compelled to eat.
Right.
And so at some point, though, you were compelled to finally stop because you'd been through the dance, the diets, back and forth. And at some point, though, you finally said, enough, you lost the weight again, and then kept it off. So what was the driving force this time?
Well, it actually started in this building.
Former Hartford Current employee?
That's right.
20 years ago, right?
Proudly. I was here for 9 years.
Copy desk, right?
In the 80s and 90s, I had a number of jobs, but most prominently on the copy desk. And I had some colleagues and some peers and some bosses come to me and say, we think you're unhappy and we think you ought to get some help for it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't you'd better or else. It was, we'd like to see you get some help.
Do they tie it to your weight or tie it to your personality?
It was combined.
Yeah.
It was combined. I mean, we're all, holistic people. Both things applied for sure.
How tough is that, though? Because, if you're a big guy, if you're obese, and they bring you in and say, man, listen, you're too big, you need some help. Was that hurtful or was that helpful?
It was helpful. I had family, as I described to you a little bit, but I have a brother who lives in Simsbury, and they were willing to do whatever they could to try to help me get help. And I wasn't really open to it. And I don't know why. Leave me alone. I'm doing fine the way I am, even if I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. And
but you also admitted in the book that you were an arrogant person. You mentioned that not only was it a weight issue, but as you went through therapy, you found that you weren't, I'll simplify it, not necessarily a very good person either. Is that fair to say? So talk about that, because how did that tie in, being overweight and then you saying, there are times when I'm just a jerk. Right? I was trying to prove to people that I was good enough, smart enough, okay the way I am. Overcompensating for the...
Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't know if I would have used that word, but that's fair enough. Sure. Like I said, the arrogance was that I got it going on. I know how to handle this. But if you looked at my life, where I was, into my 30s, and I was staying up, I was working 4 to midnight, and I was staying up until dawn.
Partying pretty hard too. You mentioned in the book, drugs,
that's right.
Having a good time, right?
Well, I was.
Indulging.
That's a much better way than to say I was having a good time.
You don't get the wrong impression, but you're indulging out there, right?
And then I would, and so most days I would go to fall asleep on the couch and wake up in my bed and not really remember what, the transfer, and I'd wake up at noon or 2 o'clock, and then I'd come back to work at 4, and there wasn't much to my life, and yet I would tell you that I could handle it.
Yeah. But you had this cycle, though, Michael, where you're eating, indulging, right, sleeping. You had this cycle. Did you ever think, man, I'm going to die if I don't stop this real soon? Did you ever have that moment? Do you ever think about...
Not really. I mean, it's impossible. Even people in denial, it's impossible not to know when you're 300 pounds, 350 pounds. So I knew I was. I knew that I had, my 3 pairs of pants and my 3 shirts that fit. I knew what I was doing to try to drape my body so that people would just not see me, which of course is also insane. And yet I thought that if I just tried a little harder, I could make things work out better.
So you go away, you're at the Current 20 years ago, you go away to a clinic, right? What happened there this time? What did you find out about Michael Prager that made the weight loss stick?
I wouldn't say that anything made the weight loss stick. What I would say is that it is still sticking by my continuous reliance on a new way of living.
Now, you mentioned God a lot. You mentioned spirituality, and that God being a real good factor. A guy who was initially resistant to God, who fought spirituality and then found the spirituality. And now talk about that. How did spirituality and God, how did that help you get more disciplined?
Well, you asked what, there were several things that happened. I won't go into them, but I know we don't have...
We're about 3 minutes into the segment.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, we're basically saying what happened this time around where you said, okay, it's going to stick.
When I went to, several things that happened to get me ready to be willing to go to rehab.
Right.
I went to the eating disorders unit of a private psychiatric hospital in Long Island, and that was suggested to me by the same therapist that I had found as a result of going to EAP. So you can see it's one thing after another.
But I want to get, though, because you explained the process, I want to get what about this particular time?
I will tell you.
Okay.
I went determined to get what I was coming for.
Which is what?
I did not know, and that's exactly the point. I did not know. I knew that I wasn't going to get to leave my job, and I knew for 9 weeks and have them hold my job, and I had this enormous opportunity, and I'd better not screw it up.
So you're searching for something, but not really
know
what you were searching for, right?
Right, and when I left...
Did you ever find it? Did you
yes,
ever?
I know what it is.
Tell me what it is.
I knew at the end, and it was surrender.
Okay, surrender.
I won't tell you the whole story, but I do tell it in the book. And on the last day,
we're here now on the show. Tell us now.
I confided that I was keeping some chocolate in my cupboard, which I used just to make chocolate mousse, which I didn't eat, but I like to make it for others because it was a way to show off and make people happy because they really enjoyed eating this. And I told them it's not an issue for me. I've never eaten it myself. Even when I'm making it, if I get a little on my finger, I wipe it off. It's not an issue, really. Don't worry about it.
But surrender, real quick. Surrender, though. Surrendering to whom? To God? To yourself? Who are you surrendering to?
Not to myself. Really, to almost anybody, anything else but me, because I was the one in charge, and that's how I'd gotten to be 365 pounds.
So when you surrender, how'd that lead to you saying, you know what, enough of the junk food, but eating healthier?
When they said throw the chocolate out, and I said, no, you don't understand, and I said, no, they said throw it out. I went home and I threw it out, even though I was sure they didn't understand. So in that case, I surrendered to their advice. Like, if I'm so smart, how did I end up in a mental institution? Which is essentially what it was. And so I surrendered to, even though I'm sure it's not an issue, and my experience tells me it's no problem, I still did what they told me to do. So
you were getting in your own way of this thing, right? But here you're saying that finally there are people who maybe had some sound advice and you were fighting this, and that you thought you had a better way of doing things. That's part of the arrogance. So you finally said, all right, Michael, shut up, basically, and listen to these people and then follow through.
That's right. And then some of the other advice I got was to participate in support groups. And there were people who had more experience with the same problems that I had, who were having more success than I had had. And so I started listening to them.
Right.
And I started listening more to my therapist, whom I returned to, and then went to other kinds of therapeutic settings, like group therapy, things like that.
So being open, be receptive to receiving help. The weight was getting in the way of that. Your self-image got in the way of all that. That's right. What finally broke it down.
And so I just shut up and started listening to other people, and my life got a lot better.
All right, we're going to continue our conversation, folks. When we come back, Michael Prager tell us how he has maintained a 165-pound weight loss and what you can do if you battle obesity. Don't even think about going away.